Hey, Red. We're not gonna get away with this, are we?
What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Transistor by Supergiant Games. Now, some of you will have heard of Supergiant through their quite critically acclaimed game Bastion, which came out a few years ago, and a lot of people played and thought, wow, this is really impressive for a development company that's not produced anything before. And so when Transistor came along, I was quite intrigued to see what it was they could come up with and whether they could create something that kind of moved forward from where Bastion was, because Bastion was, while very, very good, very enjoyable and very well made, quite simplistic in how it was set up and arranged. The voice acting was incredible, but that was what drove the whole story through, and aside from that, there was just a lot of hacking stuff up. With Transistor, things have changed a little bit. So first of all, I think I'll try and explain a bit about how the mechanics in Transistor work. You are, again, in a hand-drawn, isometric, and very, very beautiful world. And it is, to some extent, an action RPG. You can play it, I would advise using the controller, although the mouse and keyboard is absolutely fine. And you can play it like a live RPG, not too dissimilar to games like Diablo, say. Hack and slash, bashing away at various mobs and enemies. However, and this is where I think Transistor has managed to do something quite clever with its gameplay, it's also got a turn-based, a planning mode it's called, where you have a set amount of energy to do actions with, and each action will take up some of that energy, and when it's depleted you end your turn, complete whatever action you've put together very, 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 very quickly, and then you have to wait for that turn to recharge, and only a very small number of abilities are then usable while your turn is recharging. And the combination of the two of these makes for a very interesting sort of gameplay style. You kind of find yourself, or at least I found myself, using a mix of both. At times I would be playing it like a hack and slash, like an RPG, and at times I would be using the turn planning mode, because with the turn planning mode you can do some very, very complex and very, very cool combos. Add on top of this how the skill system in Transistor works, which again is very, very cleverly linked into the storyline. The Transistor, which you will find out very early on in the story, so this is no spoilers, is the sword you're carrying around. And this sword, for some unknown reason, is capable of absorbing people's identities, people's souls in some way, and that is what your abilities are. So each soul the Transistor absorbs represents an ability. You, for example, are the ability Crash that you begin the game with, and the guy that spends the whole game talking at you from the sword represents the Breach ability. And throughout the game you're going to get both your abilities and some of the lore of how the game is created and sort of how the characters interact from those abilities. And when you sort of activate an ability, it will have a set function, but these abilities can also be used as modifiers for other abilities. So in the menu here you can see that I've got one ability already equipped, and I'm capable of adding up to 2 other abilities on as modifiers, and each one of these other abilities will add a certain effect, and all of the abilities in the game combo together like this to create a really, really broad range of different movesets. Combine this with the fact that you can also use those same abilities as passive abilities in the slots, so the smaller slots to the left and right. It gives the game a huge amount of depth from what is essentially quite a small number of skills, and the way they all interact with each other can vary an ability from something that is very, very high paced, very, very low damage, costs you very little resources, right the way up to something that charms an enemy, turns it onto your side, and also restores your hit points. The range of different options you have available through this skill system is very, very cool, and because of how it's been intrinsically linked into the story, it travels the whole way through the game, and you're constantly going to be playing around with your ability to load out, how they interact with each other, trying out new things, and as you try out new things, this will unlock more lore. On top of this, and sort of kind of hidden within the UI, and this is probably the area of the UI I think is the least well done in the game. For the most part the game is very well made, very well assembled, but in the UI section, how you control these abilities and how you control what I'm about to get onto, which is the limiters, I think it could be laid out better. There could be a better way of seeing what you've got equipped and what it's currently doing, for example. Anyway, the limiters can be accessed, well, for me, by pressing right trigger when you're in this access point menu. On the keyboard, I don't actually know, I've not used the mouse and keyboard for this, other than very, very briefly to check that it kind of felt alright to play with. And these enable you to sort of do the reverse of what your abilities are doing. you are putting on things that will make the game harder for you, that will boost the process, which is the sort of enemy you are fighting. And with these, you will then gain a level bonus, depending on how many limiters you're including. But this is kind of the only way you have in the game of setting any sort of difficulty level. So the limiter system is what creates the difficulty for you. So from the respect of does Transistor bring sort of some interesting new game mechanics, I would say the answer is yes. It is very much more of an advancement over Bastion as far as how complex the whole system is. You have this whole RPG levelling sort of element that was not there in Bastion at all. And that of course naturally leads me on to the more ephemeral parts of the game design, the story, the art style, the music, the sound, and these were all things that were quite strong in Bastion to begin with, so it's quite a challenge that they're going to come up with something that doesn't feel like Bastion set in the future, basically. And I can thankfully say that this is a long, long way from that. The storyline to it is very intelligent, to say the least. And when you combine it with how the whole thing has been crafted, how the music and the sound and the story interact with each other, it feels like an experience that's almost unlike any other game I've played, actually. That's probably going a bit far with it, but it's very unusual for me to come away from a game having felt like I had some sort of almost emotive reaction, where I'd been dragged into the storyline and dragged into the characters and got so involved with that side of things and with the whole experience of the game. And as I said, with this, it's very important to include the music and the sound in that whole experience of the game, because it's all intrinsically linked. And the best way of sort of demonstrating this is at any point you want during the game, you can hold down tab on the keyboard, left bumper on your controller, and red, your character will hum, and that humming will seamlessly fit into whatever music is being played. And there's only a couple of times where you can't do this, but it's that sort of consistent, continuous influence of the sound and the music and the art onto the story that can't be ignored. So as far as the storyline is concerned, yes, I don't want to go very much into the details of what it's all about, other than you are Red, a singer who has lost her voice in some incident that happened just before the game started. And the game begins with you on the roof with the transistor, and the person you were with, who you don't know who they are, is dead. The transistor has been plunged through them, and you come to realise that the transistor has somehow absorbed their soul, absorbed their trace, I believe they use to describe it in the game. But it's oblique, it's mysterious, it's engaging, it leads you down routes where you think you know what's going on and you really don't. And the way all of the mechanics are intrinsically linked into the storyline, with the functions of your weapon being lore and characters, as well as just being, that's my mechanics, I find really, really cool. And it gives the overall game just such a tight, well tied together feel. And the one complaint I can level at that side of things is it's not that long. It took me about 10 hours to go through the whole game. I have completed it. I tried to record a video just after completing it, and to be honest, it was a load of junk. I just sat there waxing lyrical about how amazing the game was for about 3 minutes, and then realised I'd said nothing in that time. But I have completed the game, and while it's not long, I took my time because I felt I wanted to. As I got near the end of the story, you could feel it culminating. You could almost got that kind of novel vibe where you kind of don't want to finish it because you know the end is coming, and that the end won't be anything like as enjoyable as the journey was. However well written, however well done it is, the journey will be the fun bit, and the end is just the bit where it all culminates, but at the same time you realise you've now finished it and you can't go back and play it again because it'll be different. So I think some people are going to find a complaint in that Transistor is just not long enough for them, and that they feel that that's sort of slightly letting down how things could have gone. I personally think that, yeah, it is short, but as far as a complaint goes, it's kind of nullified by the quality of the rest of the game. The music is amazing, the art is amazing, the sound design and the voice acting is amazing, and so I do feel that it's one complaint that while it's valid, it doesn't necessarily carry as much weight as it could have, because it's clear where the money you spent on this game has gone. The only other complaint I could potentially level at Transistor is it doesn't really explain some of its mechanics particularly well, and this is only a complaint from the perspective that for some people that will be quite frustrating. For me, I felt it kind of had an immersiveness to it, just like the fact that when you launch the game, there is no menu. The very first thing that happens is you just boom, there's a screen, and you're in the game. That, I feel, is kind of the same with how they go about explaining the game as well. There's not very much information there about how to use skills, for example, how to combine them. There's not a huge amount of information there about how the planning phase turn-based sort of mode works. And for some, this will be an issue. For some, they were much happier knowing exactly what the game is doing and what they should be doing with the game. For others, it will be not a problem at all, and for me, it didn't bother me. I felt it was a creative decision. It would have broken your immersion to try and sort of hammer a tutorial in there. I think what they've managed to achieve with Transistor is quite clever, because they've managed to be very, very creative with it, come up with a game that doesn't necessarily follow that many conventions. It uses its own systems, stuff that they've come up with themselves that's pretty much unique. And yet, that creativity hasn't interfered with the gameplay itself. The two have improved each other and sort of pushed each other together into a very, very, very cool experience. Albeit quite a short experience, but one that's well worth going and experiencing anyway. Overall, I know basically what I've done is ramble on for about 10 minutes about how amazing Transistor is. There are a couple of complaints in there. I could have gone a bit more detail into the game's story, the game's mechanics and so on. I'd rather not. I'd rather people go out there and experience it for themselves. It's not an expensive game. I really do think this is one that a large majority of people will enjoy for the experience alone. Please go and check out some other videos, see whether this is the sort of thing you want to invest in. If it is, go and have fun with it, because I really felt that that was one of the best games I played this year at least. I would imagine that it's going to be one of the best games I've ever played. So thanks a lot for watching. If you do get hold of Transistor or you've already played it, then let's hear your comments down below. Let's see whether your opinion was the same as mine, or am I way off the mark. And then remember, if this is in any way helpful, please like, share, subscribe. Really helps me out. So thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you next time.